The House has before it House Bill number 1401, which has been read. Mr. Chief Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1401 was introduced by Representative Schneider and other House and Senate sponsors. House Bill 1401 is a bill for an act to provide for collective bargaining for law enforcement officers and paid full-time firefighters. Mr. Speaker, your Industry, Business, and Labor Committee recommends do not pass on House Bill 1401 by a vote of 12 yeas, 2 nays, and 0 absent not voting. Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lauser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly. House Bill 1401 received a do not pass in the IBL Committee by a vote of 12-2. 1401 would grant collective bargaining rights to 2 groups of public employees at the local level, full-time firefighters and police officers. There was unanimous acknowledgement in the committee that first responders provide an invaluable service to our communities. While North Dakota law allows for groups to form unions, it does preclude collective bargaining for public employees. Collective bargaining has a long history in our country, providing unions opportunities to negotiate terms and conditions of employment in the private industry. In those instances, unions negotiate with management, whose fiduciary duty often lies with maximizing shareholder wealth. In this case, however, collective bargaining powers would be granted to specific groups within a political subdivision to the exclusion of other groups employed by the same political subdivision for a finite amount of money of the taxpayer-funded pie. For example, the employees in a city working within the trash collection landfill department would be left at a disadvantage to other organized employees of the city who may collectively bargain. Further, testimony in committee also addressed wage disparity between a given first responder department in a city in North Dakota comparable to cities in other states. A more appropriate approach should be wage comparison between departments within the same political subdivision as it is that budget that's being negotiated. The committee had a good discussion and recommends a do not pass in House Bill 1401. Mr. Speaker.
Is there any discussion? Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the bill carrier yield to a question?
Representative Lauser, will you yield to a question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Snyder.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Representative Lauser, was there testimony in the committee about how many states have already approved collective bargaining for firefighters and police?
Mr. Speaker, Representative Snyder, I believe somebody had mentioned somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 states. I don't recall, but it was brought up, yes.
Mr. Speaker, may I address the Assembly?
You may.
Members of the Assembly, we are one of 4 states left that don't allow this type of collective bargaining. 30 states actually require it. In this bill, no one needs to join or even participate in a representative group. No one can strike. A 2015 neutral study of the issue indicated that fears of disproportionate wages and benefits have not materialized. We've seen in the recent past in our state officers killed in the line of duty, officers being asked to participate in law enforcement efforts outside their normal home territory and normal duties, and firefighters putting their lives in even greater risk of harm. We trust them to do that, and they do it without complaint. We trust them to protect and service, even if it hurts or kills them. Why don't we trust them to collectively work with their employers to determine issues of training, ideas for improving their work, and equipment or support that they need to do their jobs to protect us all? These are hard-working, caring, committed, competent public servants with highly honed North Dakota values. We recently stood as a group and applauded some of those individuals and the work that they've done right here in this chamber. Are we really going to sit on our hands now? We all pay lip service to our support for police and for firefighters. We largely consider them to be our heroes. Will we really refuse them the rights that most of the rest of us have? There was no testimony against this bill in the committee. There was no opposition. We hope that you will show some of the courage that they show on our behalf every day and vote green.
Representative Gugelsberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. like the previous speaker said, it's more about practicality. Almost all states in this country offer collective bargaining rights to public safety officers. And even when the state of Wisconsin reversed many collective bargaining rights for its public employees, it did not include police and fire in that. And when Ohio tried to take away collective bargaining rights for public employees, they did include police and fire, and it was overturned by the citizens. Now, I'm guessing that in the committee there weren't any, if the concern was only one group was going to have collective bargaining, there wasn't any attempts to amend it to include all employees, because I don't think that's really why they voted against this. This offers ownership by the employees in their community. They already have ownership. They take an oath. They take an oath to protect lives and property. They take an oath to protect and serve. And there certainly can be trusted negotiating a contract with their employer. In this state, farmers have unions, insurance agents have unions, soybean growers have unions, and just south of here, there's a pipeline being built. All of the workers working on that pipeline democratically elected people to represent them and negotiate a contract with their employer. They have that right, but the people keeping them safe don't. This bill can change that. Please vote green.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Kaiser.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, a couple of different points. One, the committee did have a discussion that, again, this bill was discriminatory in the sense that it was taking two groups within the public service employee population and giving them, in a way, special treatment relative to other groups. And in support of what Representative Gugesberg said, there was no attempt to put an amendment in to include all employees. That would have been an entirely different bill than this. As you'll note, there is no fiscal note because this is a legislative policy that does affect political subdivisions. So we can't know if or what the effect might be. What is more concerning, though, was what is the problem? We had no information presented relative to the fact that our full-time police or full-time firefighters were being treated disproportionately to any other state that does have unions. There was no data presented. I do think in North Dakota we are very fortunate. We're like many other states. We have a representative from Oklahoma here today, another relatively small state. Our political subdivisions are much closer to their employees than, let's say, the city of New York to their fire department. We have a limited number of people in employment in those areas. We have direct conversations between, I was at one point a city commissioner. We had a commissioner that held the portfolio for fire and police. That commissioner is working with directly those departments. In every case for the full-time that I'm aware of, and there may be exceptions, there have been Hayes studies or other forms of studies making sure that the pay and benefits of our full-time public employees are competitive with other areas. So we didn't see a problem. There was no problem presented that there was a significant disparity between our state, which does not have collective bargaining, and those that do. We know that we have relatively good communications between management and labor in the public employee sector. And so, members of the Assembly, I would hope that you will uphold the committee's recommendation and vote do not pass.
Representative Gugesberg, second time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to clarify a few things. The previous speaker is absolutely right. This is a bill that affects local subdivisions, but I guess it depends on how you look at it. Right now, the law affects local subdivisions. It tells them that they can't enter into a contract with their employees. This would change that. And as far as the problem, I think we see a lot of changes coming forth in government and how we provide government and services. And if we want our employees to be part of that discussion and have some buy-in, I think allowing them to negotiate would be a great way to do that. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to declare a conflict of interest and request to abstain from the vote.
Representative Biggeshausen.
Mr. Speaker, I would move that Representative Gugelsberg be allowed to vote on the eighth order.
On the motion of Representative Biggeshausen to allow Representative Gugelsberg to vote, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Representative Gugelsberg, you can vote. Is there any further discussion? The House has before for final consideration House Bill number 1401. The clerk will open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Representative Dick Anderson. Do any members wish to change their vote? The key will be closed and the clerk will take the record. Final vote shows 19 yea, 75 nay, 0 absent, not voting. House Bill number 1401 has failed.